Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends with the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk
You should learn something from each and every single round you play.
to fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to the Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. This is actually going to be the last episode we're going to record this year. It's the end of 2022. I have my good friend Evan Singer from the Par Train Podcast, which is a big golf podcast. A lot of you guys already listen to him. Evan and I have been friends for a couple of years, and I thought it'd be really cool to kind of talk about like how they all started, where they're going, how they're growing, the whole 9 yards. I'm really excited to have him on the show. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so used to saying welcome aboard from being the host.
Say really?
So it's kind of fun being the
Toot,
guest.
Sometimes I always like start it and it's like I'll be like, without further ado, and I'm like, oh, I hate saying it like that. I should change it up. And then it's like my brain just like automatically goes to the words and then I just say it. But so where are you located? Where do you live?
I'm in Los Angeles. My co-host Cermak is in Chicago.
Now, do you get to see him that often or no?
Not as often as I'd like. We were talking about wanting to plan out, since we're going to be moving more into video stuff in 2023. I want to figure out times to see him shoot together, because he played D1 college. So he's like this wealth of knowledge from like a short game, and player perspective. And I'm more into the mental side. So from that standpoint, that's why I love the show, because he's constantly keeping me honest on things, challenges me. We challenge each other. He loves the course management side, and it's fun.
So when did you guys first start the Par Train?
I think it was 6 years ago. Over 6
Holy
years
smokes.
ago. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was just
So how did that all start? In case everybody out there doesn't know, like, I guess kind of explain what the Par Train's about. That's a really big podcast in golf.
Yeah, thank you. It started, it's a number one mental game show. So we're a mental game focused podcast. Our mission is to help frustrated golfers enjoy the ride again. And we believe that if you can smile through bad golf, you can smile through anything. So we use golf as kind of a catalyst and a tool and practice to become happier as a human. And how it started, I've said this story before, but in case you haven't heard it, it's our mutual best friend. So I grew up with a guy named Ryan. He was always one of the best golfers in Missouri. Played at Missouri State in college, and his best friend in college was my co-host, Cermak. So Cermak and I met. You're home for the summer, or you're visiting, for July 4th or New Year's or whatever it is. I go back home to St. Louis, and Cermak's there. So we got to know each other through that. And then it occurred to us when Ryan got married, we were like, it would be fun for us to do a joint speech at the rehearsal dinner, because I'm the childhood best friend. You're the college best friend. We've got a ton of dirt on them. Let's create something fun. So we created this like skit. Cermak wore like a blonde wig, being Ryan's wife, Brittany. And we like acted out this whole thing. It was awesome. And you're like, what does this have to do with the Par Train? Well, we literally were like,
became friends.
We were like, yeah, our friendship went to another level. And as cliche and weird as it sounds, we were like, something special happened when we both had a mic in our hand together. And ironically, like this girl I worked with when I used to work at Uber, I came into work. She's like, you have a voice for a podcast. And like a couple other people told me that. I still don't believe that. But that's what she said to me. So, I was like thinking about it, and then you start to get a couple, comments like that. Cermak and I were like, all right, let's do it. So didn't start as a mental game show. It started
What
very
did it start
different.
as? Like
It started kind of as like
PGA or something?
PGA Tour comedy, because we wanted, this was back in 2016. So there was a lot less podcasts then in the space.
Or
But
YouTube about it too.
yeah, but I think it just occurred to me that I really had to like amp myself up for him. I like even had a few drinks before, and I'm kind of funny, but like I'm not like a comedian. I'm not that funny. It doesn't like, I had to like amp myself up to try and be funny. I had to like really come up with stuff and different segments and stuff. And then randomly we did a chipping away episode, which is one of our mini series where we take one concept, go really deep. And it was the mental game. And we had barely prepped. It flowed like crazy. It was one of the most fun hours I'd had, probably the most fun hour we'd had on the show. And it performed the best. And it was at that time we were kind of at the crossroads of like, it's not really catching fire, but I don't think many podcasts do unless you have a pre-existing audience, and decide to launch a podcast and then you can chart. But for us, starting with a podcast with no following, it's a very gradual thing. So it was kind of that moment we were like, all right, well, this is the stuff I care about the most. Like, I want it to be as authentic to us and to me. And I just love how what's in my head shows itself on the golf course every time. There's no escaping it. It's the perfect mirror of our thoughts. And to me, that's a great practice for taking that in life. So that's what I always geeked out on. And it just kind of became the mental game podcast. And we've been doubling every year since then, if not more. So it's been a lot of fun.
Are you a professional golfer? How good are you?
No. Cermak is much better than me. Cermak's a scratch. I am an 8 handicap. So a lot of people can relate to me. And I think actually it's important because I don't think Cermak or our buddy Ryan can fully understand what I've experienced on a golf course.
Sort of the mental game of it, like how like being so bad sometimes, just like, oh my God.
Like I don't think, for a guy like that's played since he was 3 and even on a bad day shoots a 76,
that'd be an amazing day.
Like for me, I've been on a course before where my head gets in the way and I can't hit the ball. Like I've experienced that many times. And so when we have guests, whether it's a sports psychologist or a tour pro or an author or whoever, or an everyday golfer like you or me, and unpack their mental game, I can empathize with them where it really helps me guide the interview with the listener in mind. So that's why I think we're a great team, because I don't think our podcast would work if I was a tour pro or, another scratch golfer. Like I think part of why people love our show is because it's relatable and they can hear themselves in the lessons. So that's key.
So you grew up in Missouri?
Yep.
Well, like
I grew up in St. Louis, born and raised.
You know who else was born there? A good friend, Sam Golden from Minimal Golf. He's from St. Louis. He's like,
I don't know him.
You should. He's cool as hell. He's in LA too.
Oh, really? Oh, I need to meet him.
He's really cool. It's like the Midwest values, right? Like if you're from Midwest, it's a little bit different. So did you just play like golf growing up with your dad and your family? And I mean, just kind of got good or good enough, or like, how did you kind of get into the game?
I actually was a big baseball guy. And I think I became such a golf nut because I deprived myself of golf for so long. It kind of messed with my swing. So yeah, I would like go out every now and then when I was like 10, but like 3 times. I didn't really start playing until I was 17. I broke my arm, stopped playing baseball, and my surgeon cleared me to resume activities again. And the first place I went was the driving range, and I never played baseball again. So yeah, I was always a crazy golf nut, big PGA Tour follower. I was even the guy that would like be in the airport and like buy a Golf Digest and just like wear the TaylorMade hat,
Oh, you were that guy? You were khaki pants everywhere?
Yeah. Well, not the khaki pants, but I wore the like backwards Adidas TaylorMade hat because I just liked the idea of people knowing that I loved golf. So I've been a golf nut for really since I was in high school, but I didn't play until my senior year. And the only reason I made the team my senior year is because my buddy Ryan, who I mentioned was the number 1 seed on that team, told the coach I'd be a good locker room guy. So he let a senior like join JV my senior year in high school.
But how good were you? Like when you joined, like were you just like a 20 handicap or something?
Oh,
Or
I
you
was
were like an
pure
8?
trash. I mean, like the tryouts was pure trash. It was the perfect example of what nerves and tension do to the golf swing, just all over the place. I did play in one varsity match and I shot a 43 on 9 holes, which back then that was like pretty damn good.
I'd be happy with that
Um,
43. Not 9 holes. I guess 9 holes.
so
That's
yeah,
how
I
you shoot
guess
now, pretty much.
I probably was in the 90s when I made the team. I could probably maybe shoot in the 80s then, but nowhere near breaking 80 then.
So what kind of
Yeah.
helped you go from being a 90s player to like a low 80s player? Maybe 70.
Well, I think it's a good question. I think it's interesting to think about what motivates you, right? For me, it was like the competitive side. So I've always been a great athlete and I hated being around friends and like not being good.
So I
So
totally feel that's so true too. Like when you're playing with other people and they're better than you, like your A
yeah,
game comes out of nowhere and you're like, where did this come from? And like you get, I don't know, that's what happens to me too. I mean,
yeah,
they still kick
totally.
my ass, but like,
So like I would never. I'm always thinking about it, wanting to work on it. So like for me to go to the range every week, multiple times a week back then, like no problem. I'll go. But I think the problem is a lot of people don't know what they're working on or why they're working on it.
true.
So one thing I've learned through the podcast is like the mental game is so much more important even for a 25 handicap. A lot of people make the mistake, like Dr. Joe Perrin, the author of Zen Golf. I think the episode, the first time he came on the show, I think we called that episode "Golfers Have It All Backwards." Because his point is if you started with the mental game, it makes everything better. Whereas a lot of people have the belief that I need to learn how to hit the ball first and then I focus on the mental game. And of course, like it's not like the mental game replaces fundamentals and basic grip, posture, stance stuff. Like you need to have core skills, but it allows your actual ability to come through versus constantly having interference, which is what happens when you're not aware of a mental game. So,
I mean, what I think is so cool about the mental game and how you guys approach it is that like people don't talk about it. They just think like, oh, I'm gonna get, no, I'm not gonna get better, right? Or if I do, I'll go to the range like once in a while. I'll play once a month with my friends. I'll shoot in the 90s or 100 or whatever. I'll get drunk, and it won't be as bad. But then it's like the mental game takes a big toll on your game because if you're doing bad, you do worse, and if you're doing good, you're gonna do bad because you think you're gonna do bad because you're doing good, and it's like such a it's like this roller coaster of like emotion, and all it takes is one shot to like throw it off. Like you're not in the zone. You're like just like it happens to me all the time, and then you see those holes where you get like a 7 or something, and you're like, what happened? And I should have gotten it, but it's like you let your game get away. But I think it's cool how you guys like are approaching it that way because I don't think a lot of players think about it like that. I mean, I know your fans do, but like I think the average player doesn't think about his mental game. He thinks, oh, I gotta work on putting, or I gotta work on hitting the driver, or I gotta buy a new driver, I gotta buy a new ball.
Yeah.
Like I need to chill the F out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
like
people,
what is your first like
I think we've heard on the show a few times, like golf's the only sport where a lot of people get less confident the better they're playing. Like if you think about it, golf's the only sport where you can be shooting your best score and you get to hole 13 or 14, you're starting to ruminate on what it means and where you're going, and you shit the bed, right? In most sports, other sports, you're feeling good. Like think about basketball, you're letting it rain. You're making baskets, you're getting the most out of your good day that day. Golf though, we can get in our way both sides, to your point. It's so true.
What is your first rule for somebody out there when it comes to their mental game? Like if you're going to the course, like you're like, what's rule number 1? Like in your mind, what do you do?
Well, I learned this from Bob Rotella on the show. He told us, because I'd rather tell you what he said than me. But he said, if you're going to do nothing else, I want you to focus on where you want it to go. That's it. Like, and this is something, it's interesting. It sounds so simple, but this past year, I got in my way a lot. And I think the podcast actually got in my way, interestingly enough. I think I started to identify with my attitude, a good attitude, and being able to like think my way out of those mental ruts. So like if I make a double, I used to pride myself on being able to think my way back on track because that's what we do. That's what we talk about every week. And that started to get in my way because if I did start to spiral because I identified with it, I started to judge myself even more and put even more pressure on myself to be good because I didn't think that I was allowed to. Even
because,
though
well, yeah, because you're like, I have a podcast on it. I should know
Yeah.
better. And probably,
Right.
and then you add even more stress onto yourself because you feel
So I
like
added a
you're-
ton of pressure on myself without
Yeah.
even realizing it. And a
You're
lot
like
of people do
you're-
that either with their
yeah.
handicap, either with being a good driver of the ball, not three putting. Like we all create these labels that we identify with that a lot of times can get in our way. But if you think about it, one thing I just realized at the end of this year is my biggest challenge, like a lot of people, is I get stuck on the how, not the where. So what that means is I get player side, not target side. And so I get caught up in my mechanics. And I've really unpacked it this year. The only reason, in my belief, that we get caught up in mechanics is because we believe that we can't hit a good shot without hitting a certain checkpoint. Because we've seen past evidence, either at the range or on the course, that if I don't get my hands here or if I don't get it outside here,
or I'm
I
my
will slice
head
it.
or whatever your issue is that day. My back is tight.
Yep. And so it's really like a leap of faith. That's why it's kind of fun to practice. It's not easy because of that. But this past weekend, every time I caught myself getting in my swing, I just told myself where, not how. And that basically was a little trigger for me to focus on what's in front of me. So, okay, where do I want this to go? What flight do I want this to do? Where do I want this to land? How do I want this to look? How would it feel for me to hit this shot? So stay very external.
And
then
slow
hit
it
that
down,
shot.
right? Instead of being internal in your brain, like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong?
Because I bet you
Just think
most
of the next
people are
shot.
focused on the how. And it's impossible to have a fluid motion in the split second by telling yourself, well, I want this to be here and I want this to be here. I mean, you've heard this a million times, but do you think like a top basketball player or baseball player is thinking about where their arm angle or where their hand is on a shot? No, they get the ball and they shoot. Now, obviously, golf is different because it's mostly thinking, not playing in regards to the amount of time we're playing it. But that's the fun and the practice of the game is you're going to think. It's natural. How can I think in a most productive way? So I would say target, not avoidance. So not what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to do? So get really clear on what you're trying to do. And then if you focus on doing instead of meaning and what things mean, what's going to happen if I do this, what's going to happen if I don't do that, then that's kind of how you get into a flow state because you're really executional focused. So I'll give you an example, Paul. Let's say, what's your handicap?
19 now. I was 23 at the beginning of summer, so it's going down.
Okay. So if you're going to play well, that means you would shoot around 90, right? So breaking 90 is a really good day for you.
Yeah. High
Okay,
80s, usually.
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
So let's say you're on track to shoot an 85 or an 84. And you're coming down the stretch.
That's why I shit my pants because I'm like, oh crap, this is happening.
All right, so let's talk about it for your listeners. So let's say you're coming down the stretch. Let's make it even better. Let's say Paul's tracking to shoot an 80. Okay. Now you're on 18, and if you make par, you'll shoot an 80. Okay. Now your natural response is going to be, holy shit, I could shoot 80. Now, in reality, if you ask yourself, what's going to happen in my life if I shoot 80? What's going to change in my life if I shoot 80? Nothing. You're going to call your buddies and talk about it on here, right? But nothing actually changes. Like that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to do it. It's still awesome. But a lot of the stress that comes up is because we've built this number up in our head that something big's going to happen. I coached this guy and he told me, I think he's a 3 now. He was an 8. He was playing in this tournament at Pebble and he said, I've always dreamed of breaking 80 at Pebble. And I asked him, what do you think's going to happen if you break 80 at Pebble? And he said, it's funny. I used to think people would like put me on their shoulders in the clubhouse and like wheel me around like I was just this like accomplished this thing. And he shot a 78 in the wind at Pebble. And I asked him what happened. He goes, honestly, nothing. They didn't talk to me even more than when I shot an 88, you know? So that's first. You acknowledge, okay, yes, it's normal. I'm excited. I have the chance to do something I haven't done. That's exciting and nerve-wracking. Totally true, right? But what am I going to focus on though? Right? Over the ball. So Paul, for you, part of this work is figuring out like, what's a great executional key for Paul? More times than not, for everybody, balance and tempo usually leads to a better result than not. Taking a breath before the shot usually leads to a good result than not. You'll find your own thing, but I'm just speaking generally for the listener. So in those moments when you get focused on the meaning, the breaking, the shooting 80, whatever that means to you, then you just get really, you focus on the doing, you get really executional. So you say, okay, where am I trying to go? Okay, I'm trying to hit it a little right to left on the right side, just in front of that bunker. Okay, all I need to do is swing 80% here. Then you're focused on, you're not focused on making a par anymore. You're focused on swinging 80%, or you're focused on holding your balance or your finish, right? So that's an executional thing to place your focus on that can lead to a par. But focusing on making par is only going to add tension and interference, which is a different approach than what got you to shoot 80 in the first place, which probably was you not thinking about score or shooting 80 at all. So it's about
trusting
that mental work, to get back to something productive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think what happens is I'll look at it. You look at what's happening on your scorecard, or you're looking at what you're doing on that hole, and then you see that shot, and you're like, "Oh crap, there's a bunker right there." And if I get in the sand, that's going to be 2. Like you start like doing all this mental math, like instead of just being like, "I'm going to hit the ball here, and I'm going to hit it 80%," and then take a breath and just do it because you've done it a million times. That same shot, there was nothing in front of you. Maybe it's in a range or in a sim.
So you see what you just did? You just thought of 2 very different things just as easily. One is thinking about the future, which then creates anxiety. The other is reminding yourself that you've hit this shot a million times and what's a good focus for me to hit a good shot. Tempo.
And like calm your brain down, just be like, I'm just gonna do this. And I don't see that over there. Or it's like when you are hitting in front of water, right? Like, oh, it's gonna go in the water and then it's gonna skip or it's gonna plunk and instead of like, I'm just gonna hit the shit out of this ball and it's gonna go straight. Like it always does. Not always, but I think
see how
I always feel like the mental part of my game has been the downside of my game. I think well,
it's good we're having this conversation then, Paul.
I know, right? Now watch. Like next time I talk to you in a couple of weeks, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm the 17 now. Thanks.
Yeah. But see how one is very offensive and one is very defensive? That's another really simple way to think about it for people that have never thought about the mental game. If you stay offensive and attack each shot, like the main theme that I've heard from almost every tour pro on our show in over 200 episodes is aggressive to conservative targets. They swing aggressive to the fattest part of the fairway and the fattest part of the green. And they rarely shoot at pins. And they're just better.
That's crazy because we all think we have to, right? We got to hit the pin. Like that never happens, right? Like, I would just be excited if it goes up onto the green, or like, or it's like when you're putting and you're like end up 3-putting when you're really good to easily 2-putted, but you're like, I'm going to go for the pin, and then you overhit it, and then you have to like make up for that shot. Now you get a 3-putt, and it's like, I feel like for me, the next 10 levels of my handicap, which I want to do this next coming year, is get down into like in a 9 or an 8, is like it's going to be that part of the game. Like it's not so much the repetition and practice. Like, yeah, you're going to have to do that, but it's more like one thing that's kind of helped me this year, and I don't know if would you agree, is like I quit bringing my phone on the course. Like I don't want to know for 4.5 hours what's happening in the world, because like it's either going to piss me off or I'm gonna have to figure it out, or you know what I mean? Like it's like this is my time to do this, and like I'll purposely like not look at my phone and take off my Apple Watch and put on my Garmin watch or whatever. Like I don't want to be bothered, because I feel like my brain will start thinking about like that stuff, whatever is good, bad, and different, instead of being like the now with what I'm doing. I don't know. What do you think? Is that what do you do? Do you bring your phone on the course?
I do, but I try not to be on it. I think it's that's a good reminder for your example with golf, right? If the goal of playing golf is to get away and have a practice of being present, then catch yourself every time you're thinking of what could happen in golf, right? You can kind of take that practice even further. But yeah, I mean, there's not many things in life these days where it's a good excuse to put your phone away. Golf's a great one, and a lot of times I find it funny that we're out there. Bob Rotella told us this. He said, it's funny how so many people come up to him and say how much they love golf. And after he asks them a few questions, he realizes that the only time they really love golf is when they're not playing it. And the time they're playing it, they're quite miserable. So until you accept that it's a game of mistakes, you won't really enjoy it. So that's another thing, is expectations. Our expectations are crazy high, and it's because we've all hit the good shot before, and that's why guys like Scott Fawcett, Lou Stagner, and John Sherman have been really great coming into the game, because they point out all of this data and these facts about, okay, wait.
Yeah, I love how you post that stuff too. Like you did that a couple
100 yards
weeks ago.
out. Yeah.
All those like
here.
analytical stuff. What is that? I can't remember what it was, but it was like
here,
so
I'll
good.
read you one. One of the ones I love the most was, I think 52% of zero handicap scratch players hit 52% on average greens per round. 9 greens around by scratch players. You probably assume there are at least 12.
Yeah,
right?
or higher.
Yeah, or higher. And greens hit is the number one predictor of scoring. And so I asked John, I was like, I wonder if we would hit more greens if that was our sole goal. And some people say, well, we're all trying to hit more greens. What do you mean? And I go, well, are you though? Like, is your sole goal to hit greens? Like, let's say, Paul, instead of us getting back on the 19th hole, comparing our scores, what if we went to the 19th hole and compared greens hit? I wonder what you would change in your course management to do that, right? I bet you'd be aiming at a lot more middle of the green. John Sherman, who we just had on the show, author of The 4 Foundations of Golf, practical, I think, -golf.com.
Yeah, great website.
Yeah, it's a great website. He said I think 95% of amateurs, if they are going to miss the green, miss it short. Because if you think about overestimation of our yardages, because we've hit one 9-iron, 155, 60 yards, we think that we can do that every time. And we're prone to mishit it because we're not professionals, right? If the professionals mishit it, but their misses are tighter, you bet your ass we're going to mishit it a lot worse. So because of wrong club choice and mishitting, I think only 5% of people overshoot the green, because usually overshooting the green is hitting a ball too good, right? So our chances of doing that are very slim. So John suggests hitting to the back or back middle yardage of greens, because it's giving you room for error, right, on a miss hit. But
which probably usually happens a lot. Yeah, you're gonna miss it, and then short.
And you're giving yourself room to hit more greens, right? So that's an example of like a stat that's like, okay, let me root myself in the facts instead of,
what I
comparing
think the
myself against
facts
what a pro
are and
does.
comparing myself
Yeah.
to like, like if you play a scratch player, let's say a 3 or 4 or 5 handicap, and you watch them play, it's like they're very conservative and they hit the spot, and it's they do the opposite of what I'm doing essentially. I'm like trying to hit the shit out of the ball as far as I can go. Then it's going to be a miss hit. It's going to go in the woods. Okay, that's 2 to get out. And then it's going to be, I'm going to have a bad layup, or coming in. And like, it just, I don't know. I didn't really think about the mental game. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, but like, I didn't think about it. Like, I didn't think that was one of the missing components in my game. I always thought it was product, right? Like that was me. When I started my site, I was like, oh, I felt like we're always getting sold on the newest and greatest thing, but like, is it true or not, right? And if you're an average player, 30 to 25 to 50, let's say, like with disposable income, you're gonna buy stuff, right? Just to like get that extra edge. I mean, all golfers do it actually. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like you can only advance a driver so much, right?
Right.
And like,
well, it's funny.
So
I used to work with TaylorMade. I started my career working at their ad agency. So I was the one creating the campaigns for on the team that created those campaigns for like R11 and rocket balls and all that stuff. And I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm biased because I've been behind the scenes, but do you think golfers know the difference between like a revolutionary technology versus an evolutionary, year 2 of a product? Because I felt like rocket balls, I think a lot of people knew that was revolutionary because of the speed pocket. I think people like
still a great
technology
product.
they can see.
Still a great product. Yeah.
I still have it. I still use it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. I mean, even the balls, the rocket balls are like one of the hottest sellers. You would never know that. Like you wouldn't think it would be. But...
Yeah, I remember those were good balls. But like for the stealth, which I don't have,
neither.
I didn't. To me, I was like, I don't know. Is carbon better? I don't know. They say it is, but
it's funny because I have I'm gonna buy a new driver next year. I'll get one. I've gone through all the drivers this year. I went through all the drivers last year, but I didn't keep any of them. I just was like, I'm gonna test them out, play with them. But like, I'm still hitting my G410, and it's a 4-year-old driver essentially. Will be in a couple months. But like, people still go, "Oh, I love that driver. That thing was like solid." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" I just like it because it's pretty forgiving and it like is pretty accurate. But I don't know. I agree. I think that what's happening now, when it comes, at least with the products that are coming out, I think with launch monitors becoming cheaper, like that's a huge game changer in my opinion, because now we can get the data and it's going to show you like what's really happening. Like I didn't even know, like when you're an average player, like why am I hitting at the ball right? And then you start seeing it and you start seeing like what's happening with your club face being open. You're like, oh, that's why it's happening. Like you start putting the 2 and 2 together.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a great point. I've found that understanding and education is probably one of the best things you can do with your golf game. Because like understanding why you do something and what your tendencies are can help you when you're out there. Whereas I don't think there's anything worse than seeing a miss and having no idea why you did it.
What do you have to have, like, what's happening with you guys this next coming year? Like, what are some of your big plans?
YouTube. Yeah, we want to get videos are going to be our biggest thing. I've been thinking a lot about how to create content that makes the mental game fun and easy to consume. And so, do I want to be entertained when I watch something on YouTube? Yes. Do I want to get something from watching something on YouTube that can help me in my game? 1000%. So for us, I don't think we'll want to do just entertainment stuff. Like I want to do, like, for example, Paul, what would happen if I went out for 9 holes and I aimed to the middle back third of every green? What would happen? Right? I don't even look at the flag and test it out and see what happens. And I also want to figure out, a series that can be entertaining for golfers, but also like unpack some real conversations in ways that can help them off the course too, and just make them happier people. So that's the type of stuff we're thinking through. But I'm excited. I wanna do stuff that will really inspire and get people excited about, figuring out a side of their game that they historically haven't thought about. And yeah, the messages we get just really inspire me. And a lot of people are just experiencing things in their lives that they didn't expect to get from a quote golf podcast. And that to me is the coolest stuff. So video is big. I want to get into events as well. I want to take the same thing by like creating like unique, fun event formats, whether it's 3 club championships, whether it's shootouts, whether it's 2-mans versus, I don't want to just do standard scrambles,
Yeah.
like
2-man scrambles fun
stuff. And then have like live podcasts where we bring people up that were in the competition and unpack their thoughts when they were going down the stretch and pressure, and make it like a really fun, engaging thing. So I think those are the 2 big things. And we want to, we just want to continue to grow the podcast all in the same and reach more people and help them enjoy the ride. That's the biggest goal.
I think it's really smart, man. I really do. I think like giving the value, like you're saying, is going to be huge because you already do it in the podcast. So essentially it's going to be like a live version of podcast, and you already give value to people through the podcast. So it's just like, I think it's brilliant, actually. Like just that's the key to YouTube. Like I think you got to give value to people in that video, whatever that value is, whatever you decide, that. But I think you already do that in your show. So essentially you're just going to make it more live version of that.
Well, I'll tell you this, Paul. Everyone kind of starts, like if someone's listening that like wants to create something, I think it's natural to start with the end and be like, okay, it'd be really cool if I created a podcast that like paid the bills, right? Or a podcast was one of the biggest podcasts in the world, or I have this many 100,000 followers or whatever. But we didn't really start to grow until it stopped being about that. Like it's normal to think that way at the start, like how can I grow? How can I grow? But when we just started talking about the things that we were going through and what helped us, and really try and like help a listener with their game through our guests and our own stuff, like that's when people started to send us messages. That's when people started to share with their friends. That's when we started to double every year. So, value really is the key. And it's the most selfish thing in the world. If people want to grow something that, something big, it has to be valuable for someone else. You have to help other people. That's the goal. Otherwise, you're just going to fizzle out. Like the only reason we've done it for 6+ years is because I did it for free for most of them. And I loved it, So
exactly.
Find something for free that you love doing, and then figure out a way to add value to people. And I bet you'll create something that people will pay you to do later.
Exactly. That's really good advice for anybody out there who's like looking to like, I mean, because like Evan was saying earlier in the show, like he wasn't a professional podcaster. Like he'd say, "Oh, let's go have a podcast." Like, I think a lot of people are afraid to do stuff because they don't know how to do it. But there's enough content out there that will help show you what to do essentially to get started. And if you're just passionate about whatever you're working on, then it's going to work out one way or another. You're either going to learn from it, or you're going to like be able to make money from it, but if you like take it the wrong way, and like try to monetize and be like, oh, I'm gonna make $1 million on this idea. Like, dude, people can see through that in like 2 seconds. Like,
yep.
I think like being real and like giving value, that's the key. It's like giving value. I mean, for me, like this year, I've tried to like use myself as the guinea pig and like show people like, look, like you can get better at golf, and this is how I'm going to do it. So come on my ride or my journey or whatever to like do it, because I don't know. I think people need to see that, especially all the new golfers out there too, who don't know what to do or how to approach it. They love the game. Like what's your why really? What's your why for playing golf? Is it the camaraderie, or is it just getting away for 5 hours, or is it the mental part of it? Is it whatever? I don't know. So,
Yep.
so how many downloads do you guys have now? You've had like a bazillion downloads. How many downloads? I saw on your website.
We're close
the
to a
other day.
million.
That's freaking nuts.
Yeah, we're gonna hit 1 million downloads probably in the next couple months. Let me know if you have any ideas. I'm trying to figure out. I pulled it to our audience on Instagram, and everybody was like, "Throw an event."
You should do an event. That's a huge
to
number,
celebrate.
dude. That is
Yeah.
huge in downloads.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe what
so-
you do is like an event, and then it's like you come out, incorporate that into the YouTube video, like
Yeah.
you know, like something in LA that's like an event, and then you try to get like the people we've had on the show before. I don't really know, something where it's, I don't know. I think that'd be cool to watch.
Yeah,
or do
absolutely.
like night golf, or I don't know, something out there.
Yeah, 100%.
You're like in the Mecca, dude. Everyone's like, "Oh, Arizona's the best place for golf." I don't think Arizona's the best place for golf. I think California's the best place for golf, personally.
Yeah, I would say San Diego and NorCal are better. Los Angeles for public golf isn't the best. The private golf here is great. I
Yeah,
don't belong
rich.
anywhere, but
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. One day we
You
will.
wouldn't do that. I mean, I would. I don't know. I think like I was in LA in July, and I played at that. There's that Top Golf that has a golf course, though. Have you
Oh,
been
yeah.
to that?
Yeah.
And like we just played that 9-hole course. That was fun. I mean, they don't. I think it's the first of its kind to have a
Yeah, it
golf
is.
course.
Yeah, with the
So-
10th hole where they film you.
Yeah, but they were packed. Like it was packed. I don't know. They like treated us too. It was pretty cool to do that. But I don't know. I think I'm happy for you guys. 1 million, that is nuts. And I think what's gonna happen is soon you guys do that you start doing a YouTube channel, it's gonna grow pretty quick. I think. Because
Yeah,
no
I
one's
hope
doing
so.
mental game on, everyone's just doing like product or how to like, instructor videos, but not like, I don't know, something that
Yeah.
no one's talked about. I think it's a really smart move.
Thanks,
But-
man.
I'm excited for you. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I know you're super busy. We've been talking about this for like a year to get you guys on, but I mean, congratulations to all your success. And
You too, man.
Where can
Thanks for
people
having me.
find you?
I mean, they can anywhere they get their podcasts. Just search the Par Train podcast, or the Par Train, and it'll pop up. Instagram's our biggest presence. TikTok and Twitter are growing every day, and thepartrain.com for we've got our merch on thepartrain.com, as well as stuff about my mental coaching is on there. So yeah, if you search the Par Train wherever you want to search it, it'll pop up.
It's like they're big on Instagram, you guys. Like they're huge on Instagram. Like we love like working with them on that. So just like corresponding and stuff. But well, cool guy. I mean, you gotta check them out. Par Train's awesome. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I thought I'd end the year with something that really has helped me in the last couple of years. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And I'll see you guys all in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're gonna beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.